Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our autism awareness podcast called Spectrum Stories. I'm your host, and my name is Aarav Sharma. I'm an autism advocate and founder of Allyhq.ai, which is a communication platform for special needs for families of special needs children. In our podcast, we invite change makers from the autism community who are making a significant impact in the lives of special needs children through their work. Today, we have with us our special guest and a significant influencer, Mr. Greg Nemitz. Mr. Nemitz is a vice president in Autism Society of San Francisco. He is a Bay Area native with over 30 years of experience managing local and national media team sales at Disney or ABC, Viacom, CBS, now Paramount, and Odyssey. Since leaving Odyssey in December of 2022, Mr. Nemitz has been building an advisory practice with Maldo Executive Advisors. In addition to serving on the board of SF Autism Society of America, he is on the autism board for the Bay Area chapter of Multiplying Good and serves on the board of trustees for Ecole Bilingue de Berkeley. Mr. Nemitz is the father of four, ages 12 to 33. His 32-year-old son, Dylan, is severely autistic and lives in a group home in San Ramon. He resides with his wife, Sarah, and his youngest daughter in Oakland. So without further delay, let's welcome in Mr. Greg Nemitz. Mr. Nemitz, thank you so much for accepting my request today.
Hey, nice to be here.
So let's dive straight into your journey with some of my questions. So as I mentioned before, your son Dylan is severely autistic. So could you share with us a little bit about your experience raising a child on this spectrum and what signs showed you during Dylan's childhood that he was in fact on the spectrum?
Dylan was diagnosed when he was not even 3. We started to see signs when he was 2. He wasn't developing. It was really about engaging. He wasn't engaging. He would sort of stare off into the nothingness and not really focus in on things, or he would hyper focus on specific things. Wasn't really developing his language at an appropriate level. He had a lot of stimming behavior and a lot of emotional outbursts. And we ultimately went to Children's Hospital in Oakland and were able to get the diagnosis at that time. And that was right before he turned 3. So he, at a pretty early age, he was demonstrating, some behaviors that were clearly, not atypical. So that was it led to the diagnosis, and that led us on the journey that we continue to embark on today.
So I'm aware that parents of special needs children, they find it really difficult to obtain treatment for their children. So in your opinion, how difficult was it to obtain this treatment, and how effective do you think was this treatment on Dylan?
Well, it's hard to tell. I mean, he didn't completely. First of all, we were able to get him enrolled in a behavioral intervention program with an organization in the East Bay. This was 30 years ago, so it was in the early stages of where this treatment was being used. It was discrete behavioral treatment where he would literally be taught behaviors by one-on-one or two-on-one tutors who were keeping track of data and teaching him to point to things and to clap his hands and to follow instructions. And you would just do the same instruction over and over again until he could follow it. So we were able to get him into that. Paying for it was a little bit of a journey. This was in the early stages of kind of the autism epidemic. So we had to go through, we had to pay out of pocket and maxed out credit cards. And, you were essentially employing 2 people, 6-7 hours a day, 5 days a week to do this treatment and therapy. They were coming into the home. So it was very disruptive in the home and doing the training. And so we probably went a year where we were funding it ourselves before we were able to get our insurance company to some reimbursements for it. And that was certainly welcome. The way, and I'm not sure how it works today. I'm not really focused on early intervention anymore. But at that time, these organizations would essentially do the training until they got to be 6 or 7 years old, and then they're essentially done. And so it's designed to be early intervention training, and at that point he was transitioning into more of a full-time school environment.
So, in your opinion, how do you think Dylan's journey has influenced your perspective on autism and shape your advocacy work?
Well, it's been a profound influence on my life and on the lives of everybody in the family. Dylan is nonverbal. He has, you know, behaviors and outbursts that can be disruptive. It, my advocacy work really didn't start until the last couple of years when I've had time to do it because, in between managing a family and managing a career, it was pretty difficult to get involved in the advocate in the autism community. But as I've sort of changed my career trajectory and in more of a independent role, not a corporate role, I've been able to lean into the Autism Society, and that's really been my advocacy work has really increased 100-fold in the last year since I've joined the board of the Autism Society.
So, as a father, was there a memorable moment involving Dylan that made you proud of him? And if so, could you elaborate upon this?
It was super proud to see him transition out of his school setting. He was in Spectrum Center, which was a special needs program that was part of the school district that he was in. So seeing him develop socially during that time, and going through that graduation where he actually put on a gown and we went through a ceremony, that was all very very rewarding. His world is one of a lot of small victories, where when he's able to follow an instruction or do something well, it makes you proud. It's not like parenting where you're celebrating, college graduation or getting the first job or, doing well on a test. It's much different than that. It's more about sort of small victories that you're celebrating. So, he's got a very good attitude, and is a kid who, he's not a kid anymore, he's a man, but people who spend time with him, generally he wins them over just with his personality. He's got a good spirit about him. His behaviors are infrequent, although still can be disruptive, and but we're proud of him just for getting through the day without some kind of a major incident a lot of the time.
Yeah, so he sounds like a generally happy kid. So, how do you think Dylan is coping in a group home in San Ramon? So, do you think he's happy staying there?
Happiness is, he can't communicate happiness. Do I think he'd rather be with me every day, all day, with his mom every day, all day? Probably, but it's hard to sort of manage your life, your career, your family when in a 24/7 mode of caring for somebody who can't take care of themselves. So is he happy? He's comfortable. He's well cared for. He's well loved. He's in a little bit of a negative situation now because he was terminated from his day program because of a couple of outbursts that he had. And he really needs one-on-one supervision, and his day program didn't have that. In these day programs, because of the way the state of California, and really any state, the way they compensate the people who work in these day programs is such that it's really hard to keep them staffed. And so the program that he was in, it was good until it wasn't, and they eventually had a couple of incidents, and they just felt like he was too disruptive, and they terminated him out of the program, and now he doesn't have a day program. So I'm taking a lot more time to go spend time with him during the day. Rather than working, I'm going out and taking him on 2-3 hour hikes a few times a week, so that he's not just sitting at home with his iPad every day. But it's really a tough situation, and it really speaks to why advocacy is needed, because in in the US and in the world, that the autism rates really started to spike, about the time Dylan was diagnosed 30 years ago. And, there's been really an overwhelming increase in the number of severely autistic individuals. And as those people reach adulthood and their parents start to age, the need for care increases, and there's just not enough resources, in my opinion, being committed to this. And it becomes a real challenge, because right now he's on the waiting list of several day programs. He has been for the last several months, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of hope of putting him in a day program that can provide transportation, that can give him the appropriate supervision that he needs. And he's not alone. There's a lot of people who are in a similar boat. The day programs are such that that they just can't meet all the demand, so there's not enough of them. And so what ends up happening is that they can pick and choose the easiest people to manage, and the ones who are a bit more challenging, like in the case of Dylan, they terminated him from the program. And if you meet Dylan and you spend time with them, you're like, wow, they couldn't manage this. But he has outbursts. You have to be able to understand him and what his needs are. And if he's not getting his way, he's unable to communicate that. And sometimes he lashes out. And there were a couple of incidents just in the last year that it caused him to be terminated. So it's a challenging situation, and it certainly is on my mind, and consuming a lot of my time and my thoughts and my energy right now. I've been emailing back and forth with the regional center of the East Bay just today. The regional center are they're the NGOs that essentially manage the resources for people with intellectual disabilities who can't take care of themselves. And so in my particular regional center in the East Bay, they are supposed to be funding a day program for him, but they can't find placement for him, and they're trying, but it's hard to plug him in when there's no room. So that's the situation that we're faced with right now. And I don't feel sorry for myself. It is what it is. And frankly, because I'm on the Autism Society, because I get to meet other parents of other, young adults who are severely autistic, what I see is that it could be a lot worse. And frankly, my situation isn't as bad as some of my colleagues on the board, or some of the other people that I see in the Autism Society, in terms of Dylan's behaviors and the level of care that he needs.
I really feel like pity for your situation, and then especially for Dylan as well. So I hope in the future, Dylan and other special needs children are able to get these resources, and in your case, the daycare program as well. So
Well, the number one issue right now is that this is a group that doesn't really have a great political voice. There are a number of organizations that lobby on behalf of our group, but with the current state budget shortfalls, the priorities are not with this group. And there was a law passed over 50 years ago called the Lanterman Act, which really dictated the level of care that people with intellectual disabilities who can't take care of themselves are supposed to get, and the state's just not following through on it. And with the current budget, the governor has made the decision to freeze what were promised increases in provider pay, and he's freezing that, and it's essentially taking what was supposed to be $1 billion, and when you add the federal funds into the equation, they took those funds and froze them for this year. So and we've been writing letters, and there's been protests in Sacramento, and a lot of work, but so far there doesn't seem to be any relief on this front. So the situation is not going to get better; it's going to get worse. And frankly, the government needs to wake up and recognize that the percentage of people who are on the spectrum who cannot take care of themselves is growing. And not only does it overwhelm the individuals who are affected, but their families, because like in my case, I'm not able to work as much as I could, so I'm not paying as much taxes. So when you start multiplying that of the people who have to abandon their careers because they have to be caregivers, it starts to become, I mean, if you actually penciled out the math on that, it would be, the amount of tax base that has been taken out just with me would more than cover the cost of care for Dylan. But, it's one of my colleagues on the board who works on the advocacy committee. She was a nurse and she had to give up her career. I'm sorry, the garbage truck's just outside the window, so hopefully you're not getting too much ambient noise there. But she was a nurse, and there's a shortage of nurses. She couldn't work as a nurse anymore. She had to be a caregiver for her son. So, when you start taking, people, grown-ups out of the workforce because they have to care for their adult children, something's wrong with that. And when the state of California decides that it's more important to mandate an increase in, a living wage for fast food workers, but doesn't include, home healthcare, workers, people who are caregivers, people who take care of people who can't take care of themselves, like intellectually disabled people like Dylan, autistic individuals, seniors. If you're working in that field, you can make more money being, working with a headset on, taking orders at Burger King, injecting unhealthy food into the youth of America versus actually, taking care of people who can't take care of themselves. So if you start to think about it in those terms, it's infuriating. The reality is, we could have a whole conversation about living wages and where living wages should be. But at the end of the day, I think that there's a bit of a priority mishmash that has to do with politics and how things are funded. And it really functions at the highest levels. The big problem right now in the autism community is that there has been a movement towards, embracing autism, embracing the neurodiverse, saying, oh, look at Elon Musk, he's autistic, and others who are, high functioning people who are able to take care of themselves. And it operates to the detriment of those who are, truly disabled. I mean, there are, autistic individuals who and it's it's probably 25-30% of those who are diagnosed as autistic are autistic and can't work, can't live on their own, and need resources. And the resources, frankly, are just not there.
Right. Yeah. So definitely autism is like a spectrum. So there will be those who are like high functioning and especially those that are also low functioning as well. So
Yeah, the area of where I'm focused is on. I mean, obviously, I'm sensitive to all. In fact, I've another one of my kids is neurodiverse, but high functioning. Just it manifests itself in different ways. I have confidence that she will be able to take care of herself as she grows up, and she's going to school and is academically proficient. That's a whole different kettle of fish than when you're dealing with someone who is intellectually disabled, severely autistic, is on medication to manage behaviors, has to live in a care facility. I mean, it's just a different category of needs in that world. And so it's kind of a conflict that people in the advocacy world are dealing with right now, because when people focus on the severely autistic and profoundly autistic, you get a barrage of high functioning autistic people who say, why put these labels on them? Well, come live with them for a while. You know what I mean? And recognize that it's not a label, it's a reality. And that reality is a reality that, we have to deal with as a society, because the number of people who are in this category of severely autistic is large and growing, and we're not applying enough resources to it. We prefer to apply resources to things that frankly aren't as important.
definitely. So transitioning more towards your advocacy effort, could you share some of the most rewarding moments or successes that you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about the advocacy of the Autism Society is our ability to, get these families out doing fun things. And, a big part of the Autism Society are events and activities on the weekends where we'll take a group of autistic adults and families to a trampoline park or to a swimming pool or to mini golf. And we'll make all the arrangements and organize it so that we can have, special treatment at those facilities. Just a couple of weeks ago, I led a hike in Joaquin Miller Park in Oakland for a bunch of families. And, it just gives families a social outlet, an ability to bond, and really, an opportunity to actually get out and have some fun, because it can be kind of overwhelming and lonely when you're in a situation where you have, an adult family member who needs constant care.
So, looking ahead, what are some future goals or initiatives that Autism Society of San Francisco has in furthering autism awareness and support?
Yeah, well, we have, our organization does a number of things. I mean, our primary goals involve, number one, providing outlets and activities and social opportunities for families in the Bay Area. So we provide that as a resource. We also are involved in advocacy, where we partner with other organizations like the Aarav of California, and others, where we are, trying to get the attention of senators, assembly people, civic leaders, about funding and about making sure that this group is a priority. Right now, there's about 400,000 adult Californians who are, under the care of the regional center, of the regional centers of California. So that means they're receiving funding to, access day programs, access living programs. And that's just a huge population, but the funding just isn't nearly enough. So the advocacy in that realm is extremely important. We also provide information and resources to families. So we have a team that, essentially staffs and communicates via email and telephone to parents who are kind of lost in terms of what resources are available to them, what they can and can't do, where they can and can't go, schools, activities, facilities. We provide those resources for them. So that's something that is an incredibly valuable, a tool that we provide at the Autism Society. So information, resources for families, activities, and advocacy are really our primary functions. And those are the functions of the national organization as well. There's also initiatives around things like safety, where, we go into, police and law enforcement offices and kind of give them tips on, how to deal with maybe an adult, autistic person who's having an episode. Periodically you'll see something in the news where somebody is, tased or shot, who's autistic, who, the law enforcement just didn't know how to deal with it. So we do a lot of training in that realm. We do a lot of training around things like, educating first responders, how to deal with, situations that come up. Wandering is a big problem in the autistic community, where both kids and adults will stray. And, how do you deal with that? How do you answer to that? What's the communication protocol with the local, authorities? So there's so many issues that are, that are covered and that need to be managed and handled. And we help with that a lot. We have a whole vaccine initiative where we have kits so we can help, get vital vaccines to this community. Because if you're severely intellectually disabled, you don't really understand why you're getting a shot. So, there are tools that you can use that can help alleviate the resistance to that kind of thing.
Right. So, good luck in your guys' future endeavors as well. And lastly, do you have a message for families of special needs children, as like it's really important for them to stay strong?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you have to play the cards that are dealt to you. And, it's easy to allow yourself to get into a situation where, where you're feeling, self-pity or, frustration. And, I think that attitude is one of the ways that you can try and improve the situation. If you have a bad attitude, or if you're just feeling like you're a victim, it's not going to solve anything. You have to try and be proactive as much as you possibly can. There's certain things in the world that you cannot change. And, if you're dealt this hand with your family, that's the hand you're dealt. And there's other people who have, other hands that they're dealt. And, it's like everybody has problems, and your problems are your problems, and you can deal with them, and you just have to have a positive attitude. So I think one of the things that, especially when you're dealing with a younger family, is you don't want them to wallow alone in solitude with their family, because it can be isolating. As your kid starts to get older, and I think of when Dylan was, like 13, 14, 15, and he was going through puberty. So you have hormones in addition to all the other issues that are going on. It can be really isolating, because it's hard to go into social situations without being the center of attention and without a lot of people staring and making an issue of it. And so, that can be isolating. And so there are people out there who are willing to help. And I just, that's a message more than anything else that I would send to those parents, is that, lean on your resources. Look at organizations like the Autism Society, where we can provide a community and resources and ideas, and nothing else, people to talk to who are in a similar situation.
So thank you. That's a really great piece of advice. And that's all for today, folks. Mr. Nemitz, thank you so much for providing me with your valuable time today. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Absolutely. And great chatting with you as well.
And to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in today. We'll return soon with another change maker. And until then, take care of yourself, and remember, inclusion leads to innovation. Peace out.